What's up, Kenra? I'm your brand ambassador, Lo Wheeler, and I'm super excited to work through a brunette transformation that has a little bit of color correction in it, and I'm super excited to walk you through the process. So our objective today is to add minimal pops in the coolest tones possible. To eliminate the red in her hair, I'm leaning towards the NA or NUA series, which is going to help us to create a soft espresso tone. Before we start sectioning, I am combing through her hair to see where all of the layers connect to each other. This is going to help me to streamline my placement so that I can go ahead and do minimal foiling that is seamlessly integrated together for a thorough brightness around her face. I'm going to start with a diagonal parting from just behind her part line to behind her ear. And I'm going to be looking at her hair from the front as I pull each micro section to create a statement piece. Because she has more layers through the side, I might have to have a slightly different placement just to account for that. For evenness, I'm going to be pulling a little bit more hair from the back quadrant to bring together more symmetry in the front. This is important because we want to have balance as we apply the foils. So I'm not so hung up in the sectioning of how much hair I'm grabbing at the root as much as I'm more concerned about what's falling over her shoulders. Today we're going to foil with blue powder lightener and 20 volume. I'm using 20 volume because I can see that she has very fine hair. By foiling very fine sections with 20 volume, we'll be able to get a subtle lift and maintain the health of her hair. To get maximum impact, I'm going to take horizontal, very fine panels, and we'll be applying each section into a foil, over directing it towards her face. I'm feathering the lightener just where her root area is. This is going to make it softer to blend out in the toning process. To connect the front on this side, I'm going to go a little bit beyond her ear to the back section to just fill in this perimeter. Now returning to her temple area, I'm going to continue my slicing, dropping out less than a ½ inch in between each section. I have to check each section as I let it fall down to just see how much density each of these sections are at the shoulders, because that way it's just going to look more even in the end result. I think a lot of times stylists get stuck in the scalp area when we really need to look at the hair and the fullness overall. When we're creating something as an overall look, it just has so much more to do with how the color falls around the neck and shoulders. So this piece in the back isn't a money section piece, but for her it is, because she has so many more layers on this side. So that's something that I like to look at. I want to make sure I'm approaching hair from like 10 feet away. And I'm looking from like more so the mountaintop, not the forest floor, just perspective wise. So now that I'm at the parietal section, I'm going to drop down and look at how much hair is left and make sure that as I pick up a panel to place into the foil, that the connection is going to meet where I've previously placed the other foils. And again, I'm just going to feather the lightener up, and this will just make it so soft when we drop in her new base tone. Now that I'm ready to move on to the other side, I'm going to take unique sections looking for the length to connect to the section before it. I'm using 20 volume on her with blue powder lightener just to make sure that we're lifting slowly and gently because she has very fine hair. Because our overall look is going to be brunette, I'm going to leave this section above each ear brunette. That way it's going to support the longer section just beyond it and complement the contrast. And also, because she's a little bit more fragile, it's preserving her length futuristically. Now that we're ready to put her placement in at the temples, I'm gonna let down these sections and revisit where the length is and how it connects to what we have left out here. I'm going to over direct a little triangle section to make that easier for myself. Splitting the hair in the back, I'm gonna evaluate these back sections as well. As I'm combing this whole section forward, I can see the bluntness is going to be a variable. I'm gonna make my life so much easier just by cutting across and doing a couple horizontal panels. And in the finish work, I can definitely texturize her haircut to soften the whole placement. Now I'm going to be looking at this whole section as it falls. I want to pick up at least a few slices in each triangular section to make sure that this connects to this and it also connects in here. This would be a really easy placement to tease and foil. The reason that I'm choosing not to tease her is because I would really like to drop in her Demi-permanent base, and it would be increasingly difficult to try to press that color into a teased section. So for those reasons, I'm just going to be blurring out her shadow in the transition versus trying to minimize that with teasing. If you have a client that has layers that you're trying to build dimension through that isn't changing her natural base, you definitely would save some steps by teasing. Just like we had to go a little bit farther back to connect the front to the more lengthy pieces of her hair, I'm finding that the more I'm looking at these layers, the further I have to take my placement back just to have a cohesion in here as we finish her. So even though I'm putting placement further back, it's not intended to bring color through her roots back here. It's to keep a flood of color happening through her layers. I may have to tone her base after I rinse her depending on how quickly she lifts. I can feel that her foils are really warm, so that indicates to me that she might have some chemical buildup or mineral residue, chlorine, any number of things could be in her hair. So we might have to pivot the way we approach her color, even though I set out to do her base while she processes. If her foils are ready to come out, we can always tone after we rinse those. It's really important to have a plan B when you are lifting through a lot of solid color, just because you need to be prepared for the variables that the hair is bringing to you. Now's a good time to check the progress of the foils I placed first. What I'm looking for is to see if there's any indiscrepancies in how the product is lifting through her dark base. It's very important to establish if your client's hair is going to lift in an unpredictable way. Again, I'd like to reiterate that I started this process with 20 volume with this in mind versus going straight to 30, not knowing how well or not she is going to lift. Also, I'm noticing how quickly the product is lifting her hair. This is going to allow me to have the most control over our blonding. Now that we have rinsed our application, I'm going to be using a 4 NUA to neutralize and soften our Shadowroot. I'm going to be applying and combing that through as a teardrop. And the reason I used 4 NUA is because we were discussing that she wants to see less warmth in her hair overall. So the NUA stands for Natural Ultra Ash. So this is the perfect formulation for what we're seeking. The first area that I've applied is the top because I'd like to give that the most oxidation time so that we get a really nice opaque finish. Now I'm going to move along to the back just to make the results cohesive, and this keeps my application really simplified and organized. In the Midshaft, we overlaid 6 NUA, and now for an overall glaze, we're going to drop in 8 NA. To finish off this look, we are styling with the Beach Washed Luxe Waver. I'm over directing sections towards her face and crimping the hair in a very soft, subdued way. To add texture to her super soft hair, I'm using the dry texture spray. It's going to add volume and a very beachy effect. With clients that have fine hair, you don't want to weigh down the top by spraying too much product. For me, it's a really nice lift to be able to spray within the hair and then puff it from the outside in. To put her hair securely in place, I'm using Kenra Perfect Medium Spray. This is a 13 medium hold. Here is our beautiful transformation using a minimalist color approach. Just a little recap, we used a 4 NUA to create this subtle teardrop and 6 to 8 NUA to create this soft, just beautiful melt. If you love this tutorial, then please subscribe to the Kenra Professional YouTube channel. And if you'd like to follow me on social media, you can find me on Instagram at @low_Wheeler Davis. Thanks for watching. See you next time.